So, DE went to the Tokyo Game Show introducing a lot of new dope stuff coming to Warframe, soon TM. But today I'd like to talk about some incredibly needed and welcome buffs to two Warframes that have been left behind a little bit and a lot of it. Those two frames are Nova and Caliban. Hey, quick PSA here. Due to the nature of Caliban being reworked, a lot of stuff is still happening. A lot of changes are still being made, readjusted, whatever. So do note, not everything is completely 100% correct at the end where I'm talking about Caliban. I'll do my very best to put every piece of information on the screen that has been changed, that is being currently reworked, whatever. But yeah, that's it. I'm not redoing the whole thing. Efficiency is king in Warframe, so, you know, I'll just add it in. So yeah, swag from the past, you mind carrying on? See you guys later. Bye. Let's get straight into Nova. It's no secret that Nova has really only had a few uses as of late, and her kit feels somewhat outdated in the current ecosystem of Warframe. Here's the changes to her abilities. First ability, Nullstar, which creates antimatter particles which automatically fling at enemies while they're nearby, dealing some damage. But most importantly, every particle provides 5% damage reduction with a cap of 90%. The ability goes from a base 6 particles to a base of 12 particles, and it's now recastable, meaning it's a lot easier to get to the max of 18 particles needed for max damage reduction. Also, the particles now disappear while you aim down sight, eliminating visual clutter. Nova's second ability, Antimatter Drop, fires a slow-moving antimatter particle that absorbs damage, detonating for a large explosion upon impact. Antimatter Drop gets some nice quality of life updates. Only 5 shots will be needed to fully charge the orb, and it's now recastable towards your aiming direction, meaning you can do a 180, recast it, and it will relocate to your reticle. Nova's third ability, Wormhole, creates a, it's a wormhole, which you, your team, enemies, and also projectiles, bullets, instantly travel through. Mostly untouched as in how the ability itself works, but in terms of quality of life, definitely upgraded. Portals now have infinite duration, only dissipating once you've exceeded the max use or cast beyond, I believe it's 4 of them. Also, you can now hold to cast a portal to see an indicator as to where it goes. All in all, really solid changes. Nova's fourth ability, Molecular Prime, coats enemies with antimatter, slowing them and making them vulnerable to explosions that spread the effect to others. I'd say the biggest and most impactful changes for most players are to be seen here. First and foremost, the ability now gets a tap-hold mechanic, where tapping the ability slows enemies down and holding the ability speeds them up. The base slow or speed ratio gets increased to 50%, and both of them scale with ability strength, meaning we don't have to build into negative strength anymore, opening up a whole new world of builds and combinations for our speedva players. And the argument of bringing a fucking slova to defense missions finally finds its resting place. Arguably, the nicest update to this ability is that the vulnerability debuff will affect health, shields, and overguard, not just health. And the speed up will affect CC immune enemies like Xmas units as well. Overall, I feel like these changes are much needed and modernize Nova to propel her back into the rotation of frames that aren't just powerful, but also useful for the entire team. Next up is Caliban. Now, I'm going to be very honest here, I am not a big fan of Caliban, and right now he's about the most useless frame out there in my opinion. Will this update make him into the immortal machine Hanhao envisioned him to be, or will just make him playable? Let's take a look. First off, Caliban gets a buff across the board with the addition of Tau damage to his kit. Tau damage currently is a neutral status, meaning there is no resistance to care about. It always deals full damage, and if you didn't already know, enemies affected by Tau status are more vulnerable to all other status types. Alright, let's get into the abilities. Caliban's passive is Adaptive Armor, giving Caliban and his teammates who are in affinity range a 5% damage reduction per stack, with a max capped at 50% damage reduction on the highest counting damage type. Although this only stacks when Caliban is actually taking damage. The update adds stacking even when Caliban is damage immune, like for example the mod adaptation also does, making it easier to keep your stacks up and not take a buttload of damage. The actual abilities, his first ability, Razor Gyre. I still don't know. Caliban turns into a deadly maelstrom able to speed up his spinning motion, which deals minor damage, afflicts stagger, knockdown, and slash damage, and also allows Caliban to dash towards enemies with the click of a button. Changes added are the application of Tau status, as mentioned before, healing for X rate on every target hit, healing excessive of max health turns into shield, if shield is full, it turns into overshields. The ability now also refunds ability energy per enemy hit, much like we know from Nidus. Caliban's second ability, Sentient Wrath. Caliban smashes the ground, sending out a radial wave which deals some damage. Enemies not killed by the ability are lifted in the air and take amplified damage for some time. The amount of enemies affected is capped to a max of 16, and this is also Caliban's helmet's subsumed ability. After the update, this ability no longer has a target cap. You'll be able to cast it faster, and you can recast the ability before the initial cast even hits the target. Other than that, the enemies who get lifted no longer recover from the lifted animation after being shot once. It was a major thing. Overall, allowing for a much more solid CC and damage amplification ability. Caliban's third ability, Lethal Progeny. Caliban calls upon his sentient aspect to summon a total of 3 conculists to fight by his side and aid him by repairing his shields. Here is where we see the arguably biggest and best change to Caliban's kit. After the rework, you'll be able to pick between 3 different sentients: the Conculist, Ortholist, and Somnolist. The Conculist, being the original of the 3, is the melee heavy sentient, now also applying Tau status all around and casting Fusion Strike when you do at 50% effectiveness. The Ortholist allows for ranged attacks, setting up as turrets or rather mortars, spreading Tau status all over the place. And last is Somnolist, which opens a portal, summoning a bunch of sentients which will pull aggro from the enemies and fight alongside you. Now, Pablo worded it in such a manner that I believe you can't mix and match the sentient types and you're always limited to 3 at a time. Excluding the Somnolist, which you're only allowed 1 at a time. All of these summons will add shield regen to Caliban and his allies, Somnolist especially because the amount of sentience summoned is greater. Caliban's fourth ability, Fusion Strike. Caliban draws from his sentient energy, combining 3 streams of raw energy upon a single point. The convergence causes a massive blast of which the fallout strips the armor and shields of all enemies that touch it. Changes here are fairly simple. According to the latest news and tweaks, the animation got sped up. You're now invulnerable during cast animation. The beams can now hit enemies multiple times, and the speed of the beams converging got slowed down, allowing for more enemies to get hit with a single cast. Now, during the update video, which I'll leave in the description of course, Pablo exclaimed that the beam itself now strips armor as opposed to the normal lingering field it'll leave that would actually strip the armor. It's unclear as of now if this got reverted to just having the lingering field back, or if the lingering field was added back in addition to the beam itself stripping armor and shields. For me, that's not entirely clear, so I guess we'll see later. Also, enemies who have been hit by Fusion Strike now get tagged and they explode after some time, and the base damage got increased. Woof, that's a lot to take in and a lot to talk about. Personally, I feel that Razor Gyre itself, while an obvious Conculist sentient move, should have just been replaced with a different ability. The whole spin to win bit is getting a bit old, and I would have much rather seen a sentient arm cannon or turning enemies into amalgams, for example. Though I do understand that that would be a lot more work, and we'll still have to see how much the ability is improved by the actual changes. So, TBD. Overall, Caliban's second ability got the love it desperately needed, being an actual viable helmet ability now. His third ability now finally gives us the sentient summoning abomination that Caliban was supposed to be from the very start, and Fusion Strike getting a net buff all around is amazing. I joke around a lot that Caliban must be the worst Warframe in the game right now. Yes, even Inaros gets a spot over Caliban in my books, but this rework might just catapult him to a much healthier position in the Warframe roster. All along, I'm excited for both Nova's changes and Caliban's rework. What do you think? Will these changes make you think a second time of picking Caliban in your next mission? Let me know in the comments. Now, next week we're going to look at how mining works in Warframe. I've been working on that video for quite some time and it's got some great tips across the board. Make sure to subscribe and turn on notifications so you don't miss out. And I'll see you next week. Later.